In May of 1947, 22-year-old Christina Kettlewell decided to settle down with her 26-year-old war veteran boyfriend, John Ray Kettlewell, better known as Jack. Their happily ever after would however end tragically only 8 days after their marriage. On the 12th of May 1947, about a year and 9 months after the end of the Second World War, Christina Kettlewell, born Christina Moken, eloped with Jack Kettlewell, her 26-year-old boyfriend at the time. Christina and Jack had known each other for 3 years. Christina's family was however concerned about the marriage, and her parents did not approve of it at all. Her family was worried because Jack had a friend named Ronald Berry. Ronald was a 28-year-old professional ballroom dancer and immigrant from Italy. According to the family, Ronald and the couple spent an inordinate amount of time together. It got to the point where Christina's family thought that Ronald might be in love with Christina. Christina's sister also claimed that Christina seemed drugged a few days before the wedding and most certainly during the wedding itself. After Christina and Jack eloped, they spent their first days as a newlywed couple in a rented apartment in Toronto. This would have been completely normal if it weren't for the fact that Ronald had joined them for their entire honeymoon. On the 17th of May 1947, the couple and Ronald made their way to a remote cottage in Severn Falls that Ronald owned. The cottage was only accessible by boat. During their time at the cottage, Christina reportedly began acting strange and completely out of character. She would go into crying fits and at other times, seemed out of it and dazed. There was evidence that suggested that during this time Christina had conversations with Ronald about whether or not Jack actually loved her. On the 20th of May 1947, Christina would disappear and Ronald's cabin mysteriously caught fire. On the 20th of May 1947, Ronald left the cottage to sunbathe. Ronald later noticed smoke coming out of the cottage and ran back. Once there he found it on fire and Jack with an apparent head injury and pulled him out of the flames. Jack was completely disorientated. Ronald tried looking for Christina but could not find her anywhere in the cottage. According to Ronald, the entire cottage burned down in just an hour. Ronald then took Jack back to the mainland of Severn Falls, using his boat. Jack was taken to the hospital and was said to have burn wounds, a head injury, and drugs in his system. The police were then contacted. Christina's body was found only 150 feet away from the cottage by a nearby boathouse owner. Christina's body was free from any burn wounds and signs of violence. A later autopsy found traces of opioid in her stomach, but her death was ultimately declared a drowning. The oral prescription opioid or narcotic drug was most commonly used to treat mild to moderate pain and as a cough suppressant. What makes this case even more bizarre is the fact that Major Lawrence Cartyfield, who acted as a first responder to the fire, reported that he did not see Christina's body or any signs of her in the area when he went to go get water to help extinguish the flames from the house just hours earlier. 22 people including Jack and Ronald were questioned by police. Ronald was interrogated for 13 hours and Jack was interrogated for 3 hours. Jack had no recollection of the attacker the time before that, he couldn't remember any part of the 20th of May 1947. On the 19th of June 1947, an inquest began to decide whether or not Christina's death involved foul play. The inquest took place at a courthouse, and there were so many people that both Jack and Ronald were being asked for autographs by women. Both Jack and Ronald were found not guilty due to a lack of incriminating evidence. A few strange details of the lives of Jack, Ronald, and Christina were revealed during the inquest. But ultimately the inquest could not definitively decide if foul play was involved or not. This unfortunately led to the case not being pursued or investigated further. One of the revelations that occurred included the fact that some people believed Christina had been upset about a potentially unnatural relationship between Jack and Ronald. This most likely was 1940s language for the two men being lovers. John had previously admitted to having an intimate relationship with Ronald. He would however later claim that he was coerced into saying this during the court trial. There was no evidence to support this relationship, but it is highly believed to have existed. There were two main theories looked at during the inquest. This theory focuses on one of the most common motives when it comes to crime: money. In this case, more specifically, insurance fraud. Ronald had recently insured his cottage for $5,000 and named Jack as the beneficiary. It was also revealed during the inquest that when Jack had received his war gratuity, he had given it all to Ronald. This isn't the end of the insurance fraud theory, however. Jack had taken out life insurance policies of $500 Canadian on both himself and Christina, naming Roland the beneficiary of both insurances. To make things even worse, the policy stated that if the death was accidental, the payout amount would be doubled. Christina's wedding ring has never been found and was not on her body. The value of the ring was also highly debated. It would also be revealed that Ronald had previously pursued careers in both insurance and construction. If you add to the mix the speculation that the two men were in a romantic relationship, it makes this theory a lot more plausible. The second theory focuses on the mental health of Christina and the possibility that she might have had an undiagnosable mental illness. The inquest aired out some scandalous facts about Jack and Ronald, but Christina was not spared. This theory states that Christina tried to kill Jack and then commit suicide due to mental illness. Christina had written multiple suicide letters leading up to her death on the 20th of May 1947. The first one was written 5 weeks before her wedding. Christina and Jack weren't even engaged yet. In this letter, Christina said she couldn't bear to see Jack end up with another woman and dying would be better, and she's going to poison herself. In another letter, she clearly states that she wants to kill not just herself, but also Jack. The reason in this letter is the same as in the first. If she can't have him, nobody can. It stated, "When you love someone, you really love him. And I know there is no one for me but Jack. And if I cannot have him, I don't intend anyone else to. As you might say, I waited in the hope that Jack would ask me to marry him. But I now realize that I might just be a passing fancy." Most of the letters were addressed to Ronald. This means that he was aware of Christina's unstable mental state. Some people believe this is why he tagged along with the couple on their honeymoon. To try and prevent anything from going wrong or somebody from getting hurt. Christina's last suicide letter was written on the 19th of May 1947, the day before the cabin fire and her death. It said, "Ronnie is in the boat outside somewhere. By the time he gets back, everything will be over with. He must be afraid something would happen because he is staying an extra day to make sure we go back to Toronto with him." Ronald managed to salvage all of the letters from the cabin fire and was able to provide them to the court. Ronald made a contradictory statement to the police early on in the investigation. In that statement, he said when he went back to the cottage he found a disoriented Jack with blood on his face. He also mentioned that Christina was being untalkative with tears in her eyes. Ronald then claimed he carried Jack outside, and 15 minutes later, smoke began to come out of the kitchen windows. Ronald said that when he went inside the cottage, he could not find Christina or a weapon that might have been used in the attack on Jack. This specific account throws more light on the strangeness of Christina's behavior, but at the same time, it drastically differs from every other account of the incidents. This includes all other accounts by Ronald himself. A defense lawyer named C.P. Hope called Ronald the liar of the most blatant kind. One whose purpose and design are shrouded in mystery. 3 years after the death of Christina, Jack married another woman and started a family. They even briefly stayed in the same home that he had shared with Christina. Jack never talked about Christina or the incident. His own children only found out about her and the incident decades later while reading in a library. Ronald moved to New York City in 1956. His last possession, a pet dog, was gifted to Jack's son. Ronald was never heard from again. Despite all the possible theories, whether it be suicide, an act of passion, a strange accident, or premeditated insurance fraud, this case remains unsolved to this day.